Check, 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 1, 2. All right, well, we'll get started. It's 1:30. We have our guests assembled and a decent quorum available both online and in the room. And now we're recording. We'll call to order the November 18 meeting of the Higher Education Financial Sustainability Advisory Board. And our first order of business is to approve the minutes from September 9. We'll do this maybe together. One motion for both? Yeah. So I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 9 and October 10. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the minutes? Any corrections anyone has? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We've approved the minutes. We're here today for a presentation by the University of Connecticut, and I see Madam President is here along with her senior staff, and we will let them get going.
I would like to thank co-chairs, Senator Austin, Representative Volker, Secretary Beckham, and each member of the Higher Educational Financial Sustainability Advisory Board for having us here today. We always welcome the opportunity to work closely with you in doing all we can ensure that UConn is effective and successful as possible in carrying our mission on behalf of our students, our state, and its people. As a land-grant university and flagship university, we are also in charge of the social and economic mobility of the citizens of our state. I'm joined today by Ann Andaliva on my right. She's our provost. Jeffrey Gagan, the CFO of UConn and UConn Health on my left. Nathan First on the far right, our vice president for students' life enrollment. Amy Yancey on the right, president of the CEO of UConn Foundation. Broadly speaking, I believe that UConn, our board of trustees, this board, the governor, and the leaders of the General Assembly are very much aligned when it comes to what we want for our state flagship public university. We must recruit, educate, and graduate exceptional students, doing all we can to ensure their success along the way, knowing that most will go on leave and work here in Connecticut. And you are going to see that through our presentation and the data collected. We need to continue to build our state as a research powerhouse, bringing millions in external funding to the state each year, which fuels groundbreaking vital research that has a positive economic impact on Connecticut and helps our nation and the world address our most challenging problems. And finally, we need to do all we can to continue to serve as an economic engine for our state, producing the skilled workforce of the future and partnering with the private sector to fuel innovation and create jobs, lifting up our state's economy. What strategies and resources are needed to accomplish that most effectively will always be discussed, but I believe we'll share the same goal, which is to get the most out of UConn. I'm going to begin today by talking briefly about our strategic plan, our goals before asking Jeffrey to provide a financial overview, discuss budget constraints and challenges, and then our strategy to achieve growth and our balanced budget. Our strategic plan, so if I can have the slides, and please feel free to interrupt at any point if you would like to get additional clarity on our slides. I would like to start with the first one, cover page, please. Why? Because for the first time, we are showing a Connecticut Hall. This is a new building since the fall of 2024 that is now the home for 657 students. Next slide, please. So our conversation is going to be about strategic planning and goals, financial overview, budget constraints and challenges, strategies to grow and balance budget, and moving forward. Our strategic plan has been developed in last 2 years. We call it Envisioning UConn 2034. We have over 30% of our students participating. More than 8,000 students took place in the survey in reshaping this. And we have over 10,000 people altogether, faculty, staff, board of trustee, and external stakeholder providing us feedback. Fall 2024, 84% of undergraduate received financial aid in FY24. Our undergraduate population is 25,304, 7% are international. Our graduate and professional students are 8,250. Our full-time faculty members, 2,499. If we break it down, UConn is 1,750 and UConn Health 749. And our full-time staff is 8,517, 3,677 at UConn and regional campuses, and UConn Health is 4,840. Our campus infrastructure investment is $5.1 billion. Our annual research awards are over $378 million. And we have students from 169 towns of Connecticut. Talking about our strategic plan, our focus is on promoting holistic student success.
I'm sorry, Madam President. Do you want us to ask questions on the slides as we get to them?
Absolutely. Feel free, whatever is convenient.
So I have a couple questions on the slide that has to do with the UConn by the numbers.
Correct.
So you have 7% that are international undergraduate students and 21% that are international under the graduate and professional students.
Mhm.
Do you have a breakout of where those students are coming from? And do you see any problems going forward with students coming from other countries?
Yeah, we have students all over the world, but I will have our provost and Deliva to dive deeper, or Nathan first, and say from where our students are coming.
Thank you. Yes. So among our undergraduate students, we have pipelines to several countries. Many students come from China. They're coming from India. We do recruit broadly as well, Canada, Mexico. For graduate programs, it's even more diverse than that. Students come globally for specific programs. So we have very strong representation of students from across Europe, from across Asia. Again, India and China are important pipelines for us.
Do you see a problem with the conversations that are happening relative to immigration with the next administration for these numbers?
So it's important to us to be a global university and have global outreach and a global footprint. And there may be challenging larger conversations. What we know is that UConn is in demand worldwide. Students are eager to come to UConn, and we will work to find places for them and pathways for them to come here.
Thank you for that. And then the $5.1 billion on campus infrastructure investments, over which time frame are those numbers?
I will ask our CFO to answer that question.
So I believe that's just an overall representation of the growth of that campus, and the $5.1 billion does include our programs, so our UConn 2000, the bonding programs, plus the investments made by the university over all the time.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again? I had somebody that was
So
directing me to answer a question.
Yeah, the 5.1 is supposed to be encompassing all of the programs. So UConn 2000, next generation UConn, plus our institutional and operating dollars. So that's an all-encompassing number.
So it's about 20 years of
20 plus, yes.
20 plus years of infrastructure.
Yeah, it's since 1995.
And the annual research awards, what type of research is being done?
So these are the federal and industry awards. So the largest portion of 368, about 90% are federal awards. These awards are related, coming from a National Institute of Health, Department of Energy, National Science Foundation. So the largest for Yukon Health is a National Institute for Health. The largest for Yukon stores is National Science Foundation, and then Department of Education, so Department of Agriculture. So different agencies that support our federal research.
So I'm going to go back to the same question I asked on the international students, which I don't have any problem with. I think that that's great that you're working globally. I'm asking, is there going to be a problem moving forward?
So depending on the type of the research, there are students that we accept in the research projects, and there are students that are not considered. Our defense grants are only are American citizens. So that's one, if they are labeled as a ITAR, it can be only graduate students who are American nationality. But Department of Education and some other, they accept international students as well. So it depends on the type of the research that we conduct.
I think I made a mistake when I'm asking the question, not based on the students that are going to participate. I'm asking the question based on what we are hearing is that some of the new appointees are changing the trajectory of the federal departments. So if, for example, the Department of Energy changes from renewable and goes into a different direction, will there be a change in the number of awards that are happening or the awards that you're looking for? They may not be as robust in providing grants, which you count on to engage some of the students and faculty. Am I making myself clear?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. So the way how we do, and example is Department of Energy, we talk about renewables. You heard me talking about the hydrogen and fuel cells, but one part of, regardless what is the party, that the natural gas and our resources are huge. And the hydrogen production and what we are demonstrating at University of Connecticut, how hydrogen can be blended with the natural gas to deliver the efficiency. So it depends how you position that, regardless what is the party, there is a benefit to society, and there is absolutely benefit. Hydrogen is used in ammonia production, hydrogen is used in the chemical industry, hydrogen is used in oil and natural gas industry. So it is really not going to change what we do. It is going maybe to change and include broader of the national natural gas and the resources that we have, but the target for greenhouse gas emissions are still going to be our target.
Representative Haddad, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, just as a follow-up to a couple of Senator Austin's questions. Rather than trying to guess what's going to happen with immigration, could you just answer this question? Was there a diminishment in the number of international students at the University of Connecticut between 2017 and 2020?
I would like our Vice President for Students, Life and Enrollment to respond to that question.
No, there wasn't. But to be fair, in 2019, we did see some contraction begin out of our primary market for undergraduate students internationally from China. And the way I look at this issue is that international markets for students are ever changing and evolving, and certainly administration policy can influence that. We have yet to see how that's going to bear itself out exactly, but that time will tell. But we're always working, to the earlier point, to identify new markets for international students and branch out and diversify that way. So that's been the strategy and approach that we've taken now for a number of years.
Thank you. And I guess with respect to research grants and the way that the federal government might change, I mean, I imagine it would be a mixed bag. I mean, if one were extremely concerned about the rise of China as an international influence across the globe, one might decide, for example, to double down on investing in research in quantum computing, for example, right? Quantum computing being one of the it's on the horizon as being a sort of game changer in terms of the economic and the technical capabilities of a country. And my guess is that UConn would fare well in that realm, even if it faces challenges in others. Is that basically your perspective looking forward at research opportunities moving forward?
So last week we had a meeting, annual meeting of American Public Land Grant University in Orlando. And we had the policymakers and people coming from Washington, D.C. talking about research and future of research under the new administration. So one thing that they emphasized that investment in artificial intelligence is going to grow significantly. Investment in the natural resources and use of the natural gas in combination with other techniques, and the cybersecurity and national defense are going to be priority. They also spoke about some of reduction of the National Institute of Health and closing some of the centers that they consider less relevant, but is ahead of us to see. They also presented the budget under the former President Trump leadership the first time around. What are the cuts that he proposed and what we actually finished getting. And each year he proposed a cut, but through appropriation and other means, we finished with getting more money than what he proposed. So I think it's going to be the act of the balance, you know, and being everybody on the board, being alert, but not panicking, and thinking we are a huge institution. We have the people who can tackle those issues that we are talking, but truly being proactive and understanding the agenda of the new administration.
Representative Walker?
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation so far. So as we go, a couple of things. I just want to caveat off of what you said, and you're right. In his first administration, a lot of the things that he proposed did not get carried through. But the concern that we have this year is that he has control over the House and the Senate. So this is going to be a tougher year for us, and we have to stay the course in making sure that our students get what we want them to get in their education and not what people like to try and dictate to us. So I just wanted to throw that in. I saw an article that I read that my co-chair gave me, and we couldn't find it, but it was an article that was about UConn and how they're addressing some of the reductions, but that you were trying to do it with a sensitive scope. And one of the most sensitive scopes I'd ever seen was the fact that you were making sure that you were protecting first graduates in homes in your school. And I thought that was amazing because I don't know a lot of people that really have that much detail on their students, but you spent an inordinate amount of time making sure that they were taken care of so that their experience was very good. And I wanted to applaud you guys for that. And when you do your interviews with your students, you talk about those things with them to help make sure that they get those supports in the system that you have right now.
Absolutely. And it takes a village. So I can propose something, but I need my team. I need your support. I need the donors who support that mission of university. But in one of my slides that we are going to come through, you will see that we increased the first generation of the students in last 5 years from 7,100 to 8,800 this year. And this is the record high of the first generation of the students. And that's what this says. We have responsibility for the social mobility and making sure that we educate them, that we provide the right support for them to be successful. And that support carries on not only the classroom, but mental health, support in the classroom, and helping them to get the jobs. The job is not done by giving them certificate. The job is done when we make sure that they are successful. And some of our slides, I'm going to talk about that. So if we put in the big perspective, 8,800 first generation students are 70%, more than 70% of them are from Connecticut, and they stay in Connecticut. So if you put large picture in perspective, the undergraduate of Yale is 6,700, all students, and 4% are in state. That shows that our work and your support is tremendous for elevating communities and making that economic and social mission of our state to have successful state.
Could you just say that number again of the first generation? I like that.
8,800 first generation, and more than 70% are from Connecticut.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Representative Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Madam President, I won't belabor the point anymore, but since we're on the conversation of immigration, I just want to flag one other thing and get some clarity around something. When we're talking about first generation students, that's very different from undocumented students. I would beg to differ, correct? And I would also venture out and asking and assuming that the University of Connecticut does have undocumented students on your campus. What are the fears, especially if most of them are coming from out of state? What are the fears that many of your students in this population have, and what are the steps that you're taking within your administration to ensure that we're protecting them during their academic education career?
Yes, we had that fear during the president time, first administration, and we protected our students. So I think we have a track record how to do that, but I would like our Vice President for Students' Life and Enrollment, Nathan First, to talk about some of the measures and how we deal with the DACA students and what kind of the support do we provide for them.
Yeah, so we have an undocumented student advisory board that includes leadership among faculty, staff, and students working to identify the issues, and that work will accelerate to some degree as the pressure or risk associated with any actions that could impact our students rises. And so we'll rise to the occasion like we did the last time around to make sure that we're creating opportunities for our students. One of the things that we work a lot on is the undocumented student aid application, which students continue to fill out and receive aid from the university thanks to the support of the state. And so that's just one example of many, but student services and support for the students that are confronting these concerns at this time is of the utmost importance.
I appreciate that. And I would just ask if there are any plans that you are able to put onto paper to share with this group would be helpful. I think it could be a model for the rest of the state and other institutions of how to address the same issue. Thank you.
Madam President.
Can I move to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am.
please? Thank you. So we are now on our strategic plan, and as I says, this is 10 years plan, but plan is good as well as actions that we take. So our strategic goals are promoting holistic student success, expanding research impact, providing the thriving Connecticut. So the key performance indicator will be tracked annually following AU, Association of American University, best practices. So we will provide public KPI update as a part of annual Envisioning 2034 report. So if I can move to the next slide, just to share with you a few of these key performance indicators. The 15 key performance indicators are going to be on the web page, but we are going to have close to 50. So undergraduate 6 years graduation rate, now we are at 84%. The target is to increase to 90%. Graduate composition graduation rate from 67% moved to 74%. Percentage of undergraduate students concerned or very concerned about accumulating educational debt moved from 46% to 41%. Percentage of graduate students concerned, very concerned, or extremely concerned about paying for graduate professional education next year from 40% level to 35%. Total research award, 368 million right now, moved to 500 million. Faculty National Academy memberships from 6 moved to 14. Endowment market value from 593 million to 1 billion. Yukon impact on statewide economic output from 6.9 billion to 9.2 billion. Greenhouse gas emission from EPA from 889 tons per m-tons to net neutral, and many more championships. And Gino is going to break the history this Wednesday, so please come to support him, because we are never going to witness that in our lifetime. So do you have any question related strategic plan or KPI? Okay, let me move to the next one. Yukon impacts on Connecticut's economy. So the state annual operating investment in Yukon is 1% of the state budget. Yukon's total operational contribution is 2.95% of the gross state product. We support 48,575 jobs. The direct support is 13,267, indirect 14,957, and induced 20,351. Our impact per year and growth is 8.5 billion. Our economic output generates for every dollar Yukon spend 1.76. And if we look on the graph on the right, we could see that since 2020, the total impact in billion moved from 5.1 billion to 8.5 billion. The next slide, I'm sure many of you participated in this parade, but our athletics is a state pride, Yukon pride, and national pride. We generate 226.2 million in overall economic impact for the state in FY23, 35.4 million in state and local taxes, 1,732 jobs in the state of Connecticut, and out-of-state visitors increased from 73,684 in FY19 to 152,433 in FY23, or 106%. And I'm sure that you are all aware that when we play in Excel, it's hard to book the restaurants 1 week ahead of the game. So Yukon impact on Connecticut workforce. This is something that is very dear to my heart, and we constantly measure and monitor. 76% of our graduates from Connecticut take jobs in state. 9 out of 10 graduates are employed full-time or in graduate school or in military service 6 months after graduation. We just got our latest number yesterday for the 2024, and it's 76%. I would like us to pay attention to total degrees completed. In undergraduate, if we look 2013-14, undergraduate graduated 5,221. In 2023-24 is 5,759. So we increased the number of the students and graduation rate. And from the graduate, we moved from 2,650 to 3,273 in 2023-2024. What are the job outlooks? So our education has to align with projected growth in Connecticut jobs, and key sectors that are going to have significant expansion and growth are healthcare, 20%, 15% education, and 10% STEM. So based on this, on the source of the Georgetown University study for each of the state, they project that in Connecticut, we are going to be ranked as a 35th state when it comes to the job less than high school, 26th with high school diploma, or 25% of the jobs. With college degree, some college degree or no degree, 44%, 44th state ranking, or 18%. Associate degree, 47th in ranking among all states, and bachelor degree, rank number 18th among all states, and graduate degree, 18%, rank number 4. So what they are projecting that in the future, Connecticut is going to create the jobs that are going to require minimum bachelor degree, and many of the jobs will require the graduate degree. So how did we move in last 10 years from enrollment in engineering from 3,628 in the fall 2024 4,839 enrolled students. Business Professionals, School of Business, from 3,528 to 4,287. Nurses, 815 to 1,201. Teachers and educators from 880 to 841. Pharmacists, 447 to 617. Social workers, 414, 476. Physicians, School of Medicine, 384 to 470. Dentists, 171, 2006. And other STEM fields, 8,512 to 10,288.
Representative Paris has a question.
Madam President, a quick question. So 76% of graduates from Connecticut take jobs in the state. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That's phenomenal. I just wanted to see if there was a breakdown of how many of that 76% are students who are already Connecticut born and bred versus those who are out-of-state students who come to Connecticut and then stay at UConn. It'd be helpful for us to know.
I think we have the data. So Nathan, if you can answer that question with the data to back up.
Actually don't have it off the cuff, but overall, we know that approximately 3/4 of our students are from the state of Connecticut. So the math bears out that we're having success in retaining the talented students that we have in the state of Connecticut. If that makes sense.
So about 70% of our students are from Connecticut, but 76% stay in Connecticut. So it shows that if students are educated even out of state, and if they have experience in Connecticut, that about 6% are going to stay in Connecticut. So the next slide.
Senator Austin has a question, excuse me.
Thank you. So on your teachers and educators, the NEAG School of Education went from 880 in 2014 to a drop of 841. Was there a reason why it was a decrease in that particular?
I will
area?
have Provost to answer that question.
Yes, so we do have capacity to train more teachers, and part of the problem is demand for the program. So we are doing some work to make sure that undergraduate students and even high school students thinking about their options for college are thinking about education and thinking about becoming teachers. This isn't a UConn problem. It's actually a national problem of lower enrollments in teacher training programs.
And so broadly, less people are considering going into the field of education.
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
The next slide, this is very important slide. So the time to get the graduate degree at UConn in 4 years, average time to degree is 4.1 year. We are ranked number 2 in the country. For a number of years, we had been number 1, but there are others who are competing with us. So if we look from 2001, the success rate, 4-year success rate was 46%. In 2006, 56%. In 2011, 68%. And since 2016 until now, we are holding that 73%. I want to really emphasize that this success will not happen without dedicated staff and faculty and professional advisors that we recruit in order to help with the first generation students, but all students. So, nothing happens without really huge community and huge support of our staff and faculty. So next slide, please. It is our financial overview, and I will pass the microphone to our CFO.
Thank you, Madam President. So on the next slide, on the left-hand side is just the financials we just pointed out for fiscal year 25 and our current budget for fiscal year 26. So just a note on 25, we do have a balanced budget while utilizing some of our one-time fund balances, about $12.3 million there at the bottom will be utilized. Just a note for the committee, we will be updating this. We'll update this to committee after we close out our first full 6 months. We do expect, we know a couple of things. Our tuition is looking favorable to budget, so our tuition and fees, which will be good. And then we will work with, last week, we did hear some of the news about the changes that we're going to see in the state support. So we will update and refresh these numbers on where we stand after the first 6 months and make sure we get that back to the committee. For the last one for fiscal 26, the same as we've submitted. Just note in that table, there are 2 requests that the university did put in. So the option request, or that's basically the bottom line, and this is where we've started before, that's the amount just needed to break even next year on the current calculation. And then the second one is the technical request, and that shows up in the very top line, or the block grant. So those are just items related to calculations related to the block grant. So those were the 2 items we put in. You'll see the total there of $72.8 million. But as we continue to move forward, we are, definitely focusing on all of our revenue lines, which does include our tuition and fees. So the number of students that we're able to actually take and looking for next year and to see what we can do. But also this will incorporate the in-state, out-of-state mix and our international students that we started to discuss previously. In looking at some of the constraints, I just want to point out and note, our salary line here does just annualize some of the collective bargaining agreements that we have currently, and is projected with the increases needed for increased new positions that might be on the campus. Just of note, it does not include salary increases in fiscal 26. So we did have that question, but we'll just state that for the university, every 1% of a salary increase would be approximately $6.2 million. Next slide.
Representative Dathan has a question.
Oh, great.
One accountant to the next. Thank you. Just wanted to double check with the research awards, 368 million. How am I going to be able to trace that into the fiscal year 25 column under revenues?
So under revenues, and again, this part is just the university. So the 368 actually does include the university and UConn Health. But if we're looking, it's the grants and contracts other line, but we'd have to take both UConn Health and the university combined to get to those targets.
Thank you. And then my second question, actually have 3 if I may, is regarding the financial aid, the money coming in. Is that from the federal government or is that from other sources of financial aid?
So the majority of the revenue side on the grants and contracts for financial aid is federal, but it does include all sources that would come through from aid. So there are some private contributions that go to financial.
I
aid
think
also.
we have separate slide on the financial aid where we are breaking down. So if we can just.
I'll hold on to that. One last question. In the foundation endowment revenues, is this just the return on the lump of the foundation and endowment revenues coming in?
So, and this is a great point. So from the foundation, and again, the foundation is a separate entity that does the fundraising. There's lots of different avenues of the fundraising. So a lot of the fundraising could be in gifts and bequests. Those, even though we raise those funds, we actually don't get the cash for years, and that'll be in the out years. What we're looking in this number, this is the amount of cash that has been transferred from the foundation to the university to spend on operating any given year. So this could be the endowment spending. So as the endowment earns the return, we get a spending plan off each endowment. We can pull that available cash over. Or it could be a one-time just cash gift that was given to the foundation. And once we meet the need from the actual donor, then we can pull that over. But even in addition to this, there are also some foundation funds raised for capital. So they wouldn't show up here on the operating P&L, but they are also pulled over. But this is the amount that's pulled over for operations from the foundation.
So it's not a plug of how much do we need for our using for our expenditures. that
No.
it's restricted in how it's able to be used.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we can dig into that more
Mhm.
probably in the budget time, but just was kind of curious what sort of availability those funds might be for the university going forward. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Austin has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So I want to go down to the debt and capital. And what exactly is that for?
So the debt and capital line on here, there's two items. The university does have some revenue and bonds that they support on our own. So these are payments or anything related to the debt that we might have. Inclusive here are large projects, but also some capital leases and a lot of other items that would go through there. And then on the capital side, again, when we fund with our operating dollars, this is that cash. So this is the expense when we actually do a project internally and fund it in operating. It's included in our yearly P&L, that the availability of what projects we can do from operating.
And you're going up $15 million in debt and capital. Can you outline what that would be relative to?
Relative to,
Why would you go up $15 million?
oh, for that on the one of the other items have in the new years when we're actually taking a look at that is our new South Campus. The Connecticut Dorn came online. We issued a new revenue bond associated with that. So those funds that come in, some of that on our fees and everything will go out, and that's a new debt line that we actually have in the current year. And then the rest, we do have an aggressive plan for our, basically our renewal of our housing and dining stock that we've been utilizing. So as we have plans, and this is one of the items we'll point out later, we are now actually at 100% capacity of housing on our on-campus. So to increase the number of students, we're looking at new ways to refresh that housing and new ways to invest in our housing stock so we could actually increase the number of students also. But those are just examples. Those are probably the two large drivers.
So can you get for us the detail of what that is? And say where that's related to? And the fees that you charge, so we have up top on the revenue, tuition, and then underneath it, it's mandatory and course fees. Where is the revenue from housing on here? Where would that be?
And the housing revenue is actually in our auxiliary line. So housing and dining makes up the most of that particular line item in the
The
revenue.
auxiliary enterprise?
Correct.
Can you get us the detail on that too, please?
Absolutely.
And you talked a little bit about the endowment, the foundation. And so the foundation in Connecticut is significantly less than some other colleges that don't rate as well as we do, in my opinion. So what is, and I've seen articles come out recently on this. So what is the philosophy of UConn relative to its foundation?
And I'll actually turn that back over to the president if you want to start.
Yeah, we started late, but we are really trying to be very aggressive when it comes to our fundraising. We recruited a new CEO and president who has a foundation who has experience with other private and public colleges. I met last week with the donors who says we were first in 1995 to give 1.75 million to UConn. That was the largest gift before Ray Niag and Carol Niag. So we started late, but we have to be more aggressive. And that's why in our strategic plan, our goal of fundraising is to achieve 1.5 billion with endowment of 1 billion. And I will pass that to Amy Jensen, our president, to share more with you and what is her take when she took the role comparing UConn to other institutions where she served previously.
Thank you, Madam President. As a relative newcomer to Connecticut, I have had the opportunity to stand on the balcony in comparison to the ways that other institutions, both similar and dissimilar to us in structure, compare. And our fundraising staff is about a third the size of many of our public peers. Fundraising, like many things, is a function of return on investment. And so the number of fundraisers that you actually can employ impact the number of dollars that you can raise. Not to be confused with the endowment, because some of our fundraising actually offsets our current year expenses, is the fact that our endowment is only about 31 years old. The average public university endowment is 72 years old. Most endowment growth, once you achieve some level of scale, actually comes through investment return, not new dollars in, because most gifts are raised over a period of 5 years, or they may be a bequest. And so even when we receive large gifts that are directed by the donor to gifts that should be endowed, it may take up to 5 years before that gift is realized. And so your $1 million gift would come in a fifth each year as it goes into the endowment. So, so there are many factors, and we have made some changes in the endowment to increase the number of fundraising staff relative to our total staff. But we, of course, are dependent upon the university's position on being able to help fund our operations.
So you have, in the article that I looked at, and it looked to me as if there were about 242 staff working on the endowment. What is the number that's actually there? Because I couldn't quite glean what that is, so.
The foundation has a total of 160 employees, and my investment team is roughly 3.5 employees. The majority of our investments are made through professional consultants that are among the top in institutional investing, and a board of directors committee that is responsible for overseeing the governance of our investment strategy. Our programs are aligned in terms of our strategy, largely with peers of our size, because we're still relatively small compared to, say, some of the peers that have large endowments. Liquidity risk is something that we must take into consideration as we make our investment strategies.
Thank you.
Representative Walker.
Thank you. I want to kind of go back to the populations. When Senator Austin started asking questions about the housing and I think it was the housing and costs for maintenance for buildings. I also remember noticing that your number of students that are transferring from the CCSU system has increased tremendously. And I think part of that is your campuses are starting to expand in different areas around the state. Do you have an idea of over the last few years how much you have increased in student population from the local area?
Yeah, I would like Nathan first to answer that question, but we have significant growth in Stanford. We had some growth in Waterbury, Harvard, so.
Yeah, our president just nailed it pretty much. But we've seen growth on the part of transfer students, and that's something that we're interested in continuing. You know, we work very, very hard with our guaranteed admission program and are now looking at new formats for transfer programs like block transfer and other things that are coming out of our provost's office. So I'm excited to see that continue. But certainly with the expansion of the Stanford campus, we've seen some uptick there as well.
I talked to some students, some high school students, and we were talking about looking at colleges. They were obviously nobody in their family going to college. The interesting thing that captured many of them were the idea, these were mostly kids from Waterbury. They were very interested in starting in Waterbury and transferring over to you because you're, it was very interesting. They were focused on the international, which I thought was fascinating because that for most of them was their opportunity to travel because they never had the ability to travel in their life. But it was also the idea of blending in different types of environments that they never experienced before. And the school was offering that. And I think that that's we're going to start to see a trend in, is that as people become more fixed on what they want to study or where they want to study, they are going to look to UConn a lot more for that stability to help them sort of navigate that. But the number, I think it was the number I talked to for a couple of them was about 40 kids at that time in Waterbury that were really interested in that. And I applaud you for that experience there. That really made me feel like you were trying to reach out to multiple levels of kids in the state. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and we have amazing dinner director of Waterbury campus, and she's fully dedicated. She's in community, she's in high school, she's in small businesses. She talks to hospitals, she connects with people, and I think it truly takes the leadership to make them to believe that there is a chance for them if they come to UConn, what kind of support and jobs they're going to have. And you know, we are trying the regional campuses. So many times when students don't get accepted to stores, they think they failed if they get expected to regional campuses. And some of the programs that we are offering in regional campuses are even better than in stores. So we really want students to reflect. And currently in Stanford campus, we are offering 4 years major in 14 programs. And you heard me talking 2 years ago, the students from business school of the Stanford campus were Bloomberg trading champions among 600 teams all over the world. So if you put excellent faculties and excellent programs, and students know that if they go there, they're going to be the world champions, that's how you change conversation. So at no point students being accepted to our regional campuses should consider that they failed. They will just have different experiences and different opportunities.
Representative Haddad.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Representative Walker's comment, just say that the Guaranteed Acceptance Program, I think, is one of the really premier sort of offerings in our public institution. That's where a community college student who maintains a certain average, I think it's a B average, is guaranteed admission to the University of Connecticut for their final 2 years. And UConn is getting increasingly difficult to get into. I think you had 58,000 applicants for 3,500 slots or something like that. And so that's not only a way of holding down the cost of a UConn degree. This is also true for state universities through the transfer, the TAP program. But I just wanted to, so thank you for that. But I would like to see some follow-up on that program in particular, or if it's possible for you to provide us with a rundown of the number of students that have taken advantage of that program over the last decade or so, that would be helpful, I think. And then the other thing I'd like to see over a 10-year period is if you can, is the financial overview. A lot of folks like to look at just where we are and what's going to happen next year. I have a tendency to want to look at it over a 10-year period or so. In fact, when I look at, I was going to ask, where did this number, $237 million, come from with the fiscal year 26 forecast? Is that based on your hopefulness, or is that based on conversations that might have happened between you and other folks in the executive branch?
So with just to the last question, of course, we'll definitely get you the 10-year overview. I believe you're just referring to the first line on state support.
Correct.
So on that one, that is just a calculation. So that is a roll forward of our current balance. And again, there are items in there like the full year effect of what those collective bargaining agreements actually roll out to be, because they get about 3.6% in fiscal year 25, and then the rest of the 4.5% rolls into 26. So those are just, based on different calculations that we did for salaries and fringe benefits, and those two were in there. But the difference is that top line, or the second line called the technical request of 9.5 million in the table on the right-hand side.
Thank you. And I'll just be clear, because I've seen some numbers that have been produced from our Office of Fiscal Analysis that I think was done in conjunction with you earlier this year. And 237 million is an interesting number because that's what it was in 2016. It was $237.6 million, I think, in 2016. And so over the last 10 years, You've actually lost $600,000 in terms of the block grant support. I know that how you've made that up because the tuition line in 2016 was $353 million. The tuition line in 2026 is $596 million. And the mandatory fees has also gone up another $50 million. So I just wanted to say, and this is why I think a 10-year forecast is very helpful, in a historical perspective. The block grant has remained steady. I guess steady is a good word for it. Tuition and mandatory fees have gone up $300 million in that period of time. And I think it's important for members of this committee to understand that and to sort of see where we are and where we need to go moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Haddad. And I think if we come to the next slide, it will show you a little more of our history of the revenue. And what happened in the last 5 years. And I think.
Before we
if-
get to the next slide, I have a few questions for myself.
Thank you.
A block grant, of course, is part of the state support for the university. As well, we have a considerable debt service line item that we take care of your general fund obligations. I know you have some revenue bonds, and you alluded to that. We have a considerable debt service support for the university on the capital side. As well, in recent years, as you know, we've taken on a considerable part of your fringe rate liability. Formerly was your responsibility for retirees and their health care. That's now taken care of in the state controller's line item. So considerable amount of increased support for the university in recent years. I have a couple of questions about this slide, however. You alluded to, in terms of salaries and wages, new positions. I assume that's net new positions. I assume you have both arrivals and departures. One of the factors that goes into what your salaries and wages are is, of course, the CBAC agreement and the rate at which you pay them. But a rather considerable and important factor is the number of people you have. I'd be interested to know in what the history of that has been in the last 10 years. And are you making any efforts around controlling those numbers and those costs?
So we'll definitely get you a lot of detail on there. There is exactly, this is a net new. So as we do have departures and turnover through attrition, we focus on that. So there is a group, we actually meet bi-weekly to discuss every new position that comes through. And the majority of those are when people are leaving, do we need to fill it or do we need to fill it at that level? What we do look at here, though, is really the growth in the number of students. So one of the aspects is we just can't add, an unlimited amount of number of students without adding the faculty, and the provost office does that and takes that into consideration for what's needed for the teaching and education. But also one of our slides in here is discussion about wraparound services. So how do we and what do we need to support our students from mental health all the way to clubs and activities and everything else that is needed for, basically the overall student health on our campus for it. But we'll definitely get more details to you, Mr. Secretary.
Okay. I think that response triggers a thought to me, though, in terms of your faculty to student ratio. You are among your peers in the country at the high end in terms of number of faculty for the same number of students. In fact, I think you're in the top 20% with regard to your peers. So you've already got a pretty healthy number of faculty for the students you have based on the data we've seen from the federal government.
I think one of the challenges for us is that as we add students, they're often going into high demand areas where faculty are already full up and teaching at maximum capacity. So engineering, business, the health professions. And so it really does demand that we add faculty. Also, as we increase our research productivity, we're hiring research faculty who are grant funded and who are working on those research projects. So those are some of the drivers of the increase in the number of faculty.
You do have some sections that are fairly low in terms of the number of students in the section, right? There's about 12% of the sections that have fewer than 10 kids in the class.
So yes, I mean, we have a number of small classes and sometimes they are appropriately small in certain areas, studio arts, senior seminars, things like this, where pedagogically we want a small size class and it's appropriate. That's distinct from classes that are under enrolled, where we have capacity and we need to make sure that we're filling every seat and being efficient about the range, the type, the size of the classes that we offer.
And I know you've undertaken a recent review of that.
Correct.
I applaud that. I think that's the necessary sort of thing you need to do on a regular basis for your institution. You mentioned the grant funded faculty. The fringe rate maneuver that we did a couple years ago, we were hoping would make you more attractive for grants of one type or another based on the fringe rate being a lot smaller. Are you having success based on that?
Yes, I think we've seen a significant increase in the number of grants from last year to this year in our research expenditures and with more in the pipeline. So we are seeing success from that. Thank you.
That's good to know. The fundraising, I want to ask about that. There's some hard targets that were put in the bill where we renewed the Yukon 2000 program, some matching requirements for several years in the future. Are we on track to meet those targets?
We believe we'll be on track to meet those targets this year. I think that the campaign public launch in April will help us ensure we're on track for subsequent years.
Good to know. I guess I have one last question. You're looking for another 70 to almost 73 million. Is there a contingency plan if you don't get that?
So right now, the actual university is doing a 5-year outlook plan. So we have a lot of things going into that. There's what's known as the strategic enrollment plan that we're going to take a look at, putting together the constraints and the opportunities of what we can actually do. So as of developing that, and we'll see on the next slide, that's really one of the drivers on the revenue side to say what opportunities might be out there. Nothing's going to fix anything in a year. Anything we come up with is not a silver bullet, but over 5 years, where our forecast is how do we drive that down and how do we actually look at our revenues? In addition, you actually did mention on the other side, we will continue to work on the expense side, looking at, the enrollment and programming, and also looking across the university and institutional support and savings for that. So as we continue to do that, as our hope is to develop a full revenue and expense plan in the out years.
Senator Austin.
I want to go back to something that Representative Haddad talked about on tuition. And that we had seen an increase in tuition of $300 million. I'm not certain what year he referenced, 2016. In 2016, did you have less students that you have than today?
I believe so. Nathan, do you know?
And so the tuition increase in part has been a tuition increase per student, but also has been a tuition increase because you have more students coming in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think the aspect of, if we look at the revenue and the tuition and fees, there's lots of different levers that are built into that. So the in-state, out-of-state mix, we have more out-of-state students that have come in also. That's part of it. International, as we focus on that, has a different aspect to it. But also there's been tuition increases and student increases. So there's lots of factors that go into that overall number as we continue to look at it.
So it would be fair to say some of that increase is directly reflective of that mix. So do international students pay more than out-of-state students, and out-of-state students pay more than in-state students, or is the out-of-state inclusive of the international students?
Out-of-state and international students pay the same tuition rate. There is a nominal fee for international student services, but that's not a significant portion of what you're looking at.
So can you get us a slide that indicates that so that we can accurately reflect on what Representative Haddad was talking about? Because I think that when we have numbers that are put out there to the general public, they need to understand that these numbers are not just linear, that there are indicators in that are inclusive of that top dollar number relative to what you would be. So I agree that we have seen an increase in reflective of tuition, but we've also seen an increase in students. And if we just looked at the graduation rate from 2013 to today, 23 to 23, 24, it's 1,500, 1,700 students. And those that are the ones that graduated, right? So there's some that didn't. So that's not included in that number. So you may be around 2,000, 2,500 students that are paying tuition on top of that, or that are included in that tuition increase. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think Representative Nuccio is online with a question.
Thank you. I just want to kind of follow up with a couple of things. Also, on top of what Senator Austin was just saying, I think it'd be important to know with the block grant support that Representative Haddad was talking about. I'm assuming that in 2013, that block grant included the fringe. It may not have, but it'd be interesting to see how much of that is the fringe that moved out. But my question that I would like, I know I asked for this before, and I don't know if it's maybe coming up, but it hasn't been referenced yet. But along with the growth that we're showing, the revenue, the expenses and everything over the last 10 years, I've been asking to see what is the corresponding admin growth over the last 10 years. So we can see how much of this is professors, how much of this is admin, how much of this is I want to see it all broken down at a staffing level. And also somebody, I'm not quite sure who it was, I didn't catch your name, mentioned that teachers were at max capacity for some classes. And I was wondering, there was talks before, how many classes are the professors teaching right now? Are they teaching 4 or are they teaching less?
Yes, so in terms, this is Ann DeLeva, the provost. Faculty teaching load varies by discipline and type of appointment. So for example, our in-residence faculty who are primarily devoted to teaching in their workload are teaching 7 classes per academic year, 3 one semester for the other. Similarly, visiting assistant professors who are with us temporarily to fill gaps are 7 per year. In terms of our tenure line faculty, it varies by discipline. So humanities and social sciences are typically teaching 2 each semester for 4 per year. In the sciences, it's typically 3 per year, 2 one semester, 1 the other. And this is because these are the faculty who are running large research labs and driving the large federal research grants. And so they have a lower teaching load accordingly. We're also constrained at times by accreditation standards. So in nursing clinical classes, for example, we can only have 6 students per faculty member. So that means we're hiring a relatively large number of faculty to teach those students. Thank you.
So is there opportunity to look at some of those? For instance, you mentioned the sciences, they're only teaching 3. Is their salary being paid, their full salary being paid by the university, or are they getting a full salary from the university plus research money from research grants? And how do we get, because sciences and the human services, as you guys showed in the degrees, are high demand. So how do we get those professors teaching, I don't know, at least, it seems like really low to say they're only going to teach 3 classes a year with their salary.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the standard of 3 classes per year for research productive STEM faculty is industry standard across higher education at R1 universities. This is what you'll see. So you'll see this teaching load at Purdue or at Berkeley, at University of Maryland, at our peer and aspirant institutions. So we are in alignment with other institutions. So these faculty, if you look at their workload overall, yes, they're teaching 3 classes per year. They're also mentoring graduate students. They're also providing service to the university and to their disciplines. And they are also running their major research labs, often with millions of dollars of research. So they are people who are working very hard on behalf of the university and of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last thing that I had asked to see is the increase in the spend of athletic spend and how much of the athletic spend is paid for from itself and how much of it is being subsidized through tuition and through state dollars. So those were the 3 that I had wanted to see: classes taught, administrative growth, and athletic spend. And I just wanted to confirm, I read something the other day that tuition is not going up this next year. Is that correct?
We have discussion of proposing tuition increase this year and looking how we can address needs internally. But as I says, it's a pause for this year, and we are very sensitive of affordability and where we are today. So, but I would like our CFO to respond to question related to athletics.
So just on the athletic, we did want to point out that we submitted to the board the NCAA report that has the details of the athletic in there. So we have that from 2019 through 24, and then some projections for 25 and 26. But be happy to get more information and more data on that one also as we move forward. And we do actually have a slide on the tuition, but yes, you are correct that a 0% tuition increase and a pause in the increase on tuition for next year for fiscal 26.
Okay, and I guess my last thing then, here's where I kind of struggle. I know a lot of people may not agree with me here, but if we're going to continue to see expenses go up, salaries go up, everything else, and that, I guess I don't understand. Maybe you can enlighten me here, why it's unreasonable to think that tuition would also go up along with that, right? I think it's kind of odd to think that, we're going to pay people more, we're going to add more programs, we're going to add more buildings, we're going to do all these things, but that somehow tuition is going to stay flat.
I think the next slide is going to help us. How much do we put on the students and their families? And then we are going further to compare us to other land grant and public flagship university. So you are going to see that among the public flagship university, when it comes in state students, we are ranked number 3, so very high. So any further increase can lead to students leaving Connecticut, and that's what we don't want to happen. Right now, we have about 9% more students apply to UConn in month of October comparing to October of the next year. So demand is very high. But once our price tag comes comparable to out of state or to other institutions, we know that also students of Connecticut like to leave the home and have experience. So we have to be very thoughtful that the high school population and graduates of high school is declining in Connecticut 15 to 18%. So the higher price of university might lead some families and students to decide not to come and stay in Connecticut.
And yeah, I understand that, right? And I get what you're saying. I guess my point is, in that case, right, as an accountant, I look at that and say, if we're going to continue to add costs, I just don't know where else you guys think, where we think the money is going to come from, right? So if the expenses are going to continue to go up, then the tuition is going to continue to go up. To me, it just seems like ridiculous to think that we would increase the expenses and keep tuition flat. And I know that's often a point that is argued up here, that we don't want to see any increase in tuition. Well, then I would push back and say, then we need to find out what we're doing the expense wise so we can optimize that and not have a significant increase in expense. And I think we're getting there. I think there's just a few more pieces in here that I would like to see before I get comfortable with that.
I think what we are proposing is 1 year pause to reflect on everything. And we are looking how to be creative to generate additional revenues. So what we are not suggesting, keep the status quo and ask state for more and do less. But in the following slides, we are going and proposing what else can we do to generate additional revenues. We are also going to try to increase more students that we accept to UConn because demand is there. As we said, housing the issue. We are working with the public sector. You are aware what we are doing in Hartford. We are going to expand in Stanford as well. We are looking for solution for Avery Point. Waterbury campus is opening private sector new building that is going to be appealing to attract more students in Ally Health. So we have to be creative. How do we generate additional revenues?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Other questions of the board? Oh, Senator Flexer, I believe, has a question.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for this presentation and sorry to continue the interruption of it. But I wonder, as you are sharing some additional information, if you could include a couple of different things. It seems to me from this baseline, from this conversation, perhaps there's missing a baseline of what a Research One university is. Could you briefly give that summary and perhaps send us something in more detail?
Absolutely. So R01 institution, and we are comparing ourselves to American Association of University, are top institutions that do research. Why do we do the research? It's a benefit of our state, it's a benefit of our nation, and it's a benefit of the world. Death of the cancer is increasing, is not decreasing. We have to do the research. Without paying attention and doing the research, we are going to decline as a humanity. So when I come to research slide, I'm going to share with you how the research dollars and federal dollars that we bring help many across the state. We don't spend the research dollars doing the research at UConn alone. And one example I'm going to give you, the research that when I came to UConn, it was National Science Foundation to addressing the STEM programs in disadvantaged communities. And the school that I worked was Heaven Ballard High Tech School, 800 students in Bridgeport with a proficiency in math 8%. So how do we teach them STEM programs, math, physics, biology, that they can be successful? We have early college preparation program there. We have summer programs from the teacher from disadvantaged community that they come during the summer to UConn, and we teach them how to teach STEM. And then we have Department of Energy program, how to create the controllers and measure electrical efficiency, because many of the students from that school are going to go to vocational school or technical schools. So what are the skills that we provide as a UConn community to our communities to make sure they're successful? Another one that I'm putting in my slide, but I can bring it now, the Center for Transportation celebrated 50th anniversary this year. They bring the federal dollars and state dollars to help the workers, to train the workers. They are having the grants where they're putting the sensor on the tracks to measure the quality of the road and what are the parts of the road to repair. And they are saving taxpayers money, 90 million. So that is significant. And it comes with the financial support from federal government and state government of 7.5 for this center to operate. This weekend was the World Day of the traffic deaths. And Senator Murphy and Governor Lamont talk about how to provide more support, federal support and state support for the security of our road. And UConn has been working on this for the last 50 years with our community. So I think when we think of the research dollars, many people have interpretation that is what faculty cook in the labs and experiments that they do, but it's also important to consider what that does for the health disparity, what is that doing for the health of our community, what is that doing for the safety, and where do we spend those research dollars? So I have a heat map to show of 368 million, how that benefit our community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if you could also, I think on the next slide that you were sharing, or maybe it was the previous slide, the one with the breakdown from tuition dollars.
Breakdown? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so if we look, I think we started to measure time before COVID and after COVID. So in FY19, state supports for UConn was 25%. The students' revenues were 50% and 25% was on the other revenues. In FY 20, during the COVID, state stepped in and significantly helped us. So that support was 26, 28, and 29 respectively from 2000 to 2022. And students' revenue were 45 and 45%. If FY 24, the state support was 18%, where the students pick up from 47% to 53%, and other revenues that university generated is 29%. And our prediction, that is FY 22, we are expecting to see 20% of support coming from state and students' revenue 54% if we keep the tuition paused and small increase in the fees related to student success like a mental health, and then other revenues 26%.
Thank you. I guess what I would like to see is I'd like to see this data broken back through a longer period of time. So going back through a longer period of time, I'd also like to see this compared with other institutions, and also tuition increases, what those have been over that same period of time. I'd like to see that side by side, and what the tuition increases have been at peer institutions like you were showing on the last slide of the comparison. I want to be on the record as saying I think that the conversation that is unfortunately happening at the university, where there are many programs that are under deep scrutiny and perhaps under threat of elimination. There are a lot of people at the university, students and faculty and staff, who are very concerned about the way this conversation is going. And I know that you are taking this conversation seriously, and it is being pushed upon you by decisions that are made in this building. And I hope that you can find a way, and that perhaps through meetings like this, we can all find a way to give you the resources that you need, so we don't have to continue to see the tuition increase and programs and academic offerings being cut, like is currently being deliberated on your campuses right now with great dismay on the part of many, including myself.
I think, any other questions? Want to proceed with your presentation?
That comes to affordability, and I think we already touched a little on this. So our net to students is 21,044. This is tuition and board and room after scholarship. And if we compare to other public university, we can see that we are very high. And that's what I'm warning all of us to think, how attractive and for how long we are going to stay. And the worst scenario is when the demand and applications can drop. And if we don't pay attention to the net to our students, we can price ourselves out of competition. The next slide, please. This is very dear to my heart. So we talk about the social mobility and first generation of the students. In FY 25, we had 7,054 first generation students. In FY 24, 8,426. And based on application, we estimate that this year we are going to be 8,800 students. University support increased from FY 21 from 150 million to 197 million in FY 24. The federal Pell support decreased from 56 million to 53.7 million, but I hope with the new Pell programs online that more students are going to have ability to apply, and that is going to increase in FY 25. And other revenues is from 17.3 million in FY 21 to 21.1. And state, including our Willis scholarship, went from FY 10.7 to 15.6 in FY 24. Students need continue to grow, and it's a single greatest reason that students leave. When students leave university, we ask them why. Why do we see the drop? And almost 40% of the students, we interview them on the exit. 40% are saying because of finances and financial pressure. Since FY24, university supported student aid increased by 40%, and 16.5% of the tuition revenue is set aside in FY25 for need-based aid. So I will go to the next slide and talk a little what kind of support our students need. So over 75 million is spent on services fostering students' well-being. We have over 200 staff members who provide direct service to students in advising, physical and mental health, and students with disabilities. So the student support service includes students' physical and mental health, academic engagement and support, student athlete success programs, W Center, writing tutoring, Q Center, math tutoring, advising, Veterans Affairs and military programs, cultural centers and programs, and centers for students with disabilities. The next one is additional constraint and challenges. As Provost Ann Andaliva talk, we have some classes with a large number of the students. On the right, you see faculty Thomas Abbott, Associate Professor in Residence of Molecular and Cell Biology, lectured to a class of more than 300 biology students on the first day of the class in 2022. So on-campus housing limitation with increased enrollment. As our CFO shared with you, our occupancy is 100%. And I would say it's even more than 100% because we go to now private apartments on Oak, and we ask owners to lease apartments to our students. Teaching capacity for the new students in high demand majors. We increased the number of the students in School of Nursing. We almost doubled, but application, we have 3,900 students applying for 225 seats. So some of the areas have significant demand that we are experiencing last 5 years. Declining number of high school students graduate in Connecticut. We have to be mindful of that and how we make sure that students who apply UConn, we have slots for them and we keep them in Connecticut. Mental health and academic counseling needs higher than ever. It's even higher than during the COVID time. Maximum student-faculty ratio in selected programs due to accreditation standard. Our provost just mentioned School of Nursing. For the clinical, we have to have maximum 6:1. Dental school is 6:1 as well. And state processes that we have limit flexibility and rapid response. So those are constraints and challenges that we have. But on the positive notes, whenever there is a trouble, there is also opportunity to be creative. So the strategies for the growth and the balanced budgets, we continue to expand economic activities in state. We ensemble strategic enrollment plan. We increased efficiency in delivering of the education through faculty ratio, advising, class size, modality, and all of our classes are now becoming digital and the way how we use the classroom and the space. We grow fundraising with the objective of 1.5 billion campaign and to grow endowment to 1 billion, and significant amount of money and time that we spend is actually supporting our students and scholarships. So student first is really the tagline for us. Increase the research awards to 500 million per year, generate new revenues, for example, increase summer housing occupancy and some of the summer programs, and implement financial improvement plans. So those are the 7 that we put on the list that we are looking how to grow our revenues.
Madam President, when you were here with the health center a month or so ago, we talked about commercializing the research, that when the research deploys, whether it's a technique or a technology, there are other research that happens outside the health center that you guys are involved in. There must be opportunities when those technologies or processes that are developed on your property with your people, using your resources, that the university might participate in some of those profits down the road? What efforts are underway in that regard?
Yeah, we are looking the new financial model, that when somebody gets university license, and we provide options and license, in the field of operation, we are going to talk about license fee, but in some instances, we have an university will ask about 3 to 5% of the financial contribution of the company. And our focus has been really on helping small companies. 80% of the companies in Connecticut are small and medium-sized businesses. So we had significant number of the small companies in incubator across the Yukon Health. Farmington 400 is about 50 to 67. They have the subsidized rent. We provide them with the marketing. We provide them with student support. We provide them with the material that they need to prepare for their pitch. But some of them are successful, and when they graduate, there is significant benefit to the state. And when they do the significant fundraising, they either move across the street or they go to New Haven when there is significant healthcare cluster. So the most important is really to provide them support that they want to stay in Connecticut and they grow in Connecticut.
I appreciate that. So I applaud that. Is there, though, more specifically contractual obligations that people who benefit from university research might have to contribute back to the university as these products and processes hit the market and become profitable?
Yeah, for a long time, we had been do free for everybody. And that has been with some of the state policies. And I will give you example, the BioConnecticut. So when Yukon invests and gets money from BioConnecticut, all the revenues are first going to Connecticut Innovations and BioConnecticut. It's not going to Yukon. So we had some of the models where we actually, when we are successful, we had to pay instead of generating revenue. So some of the models we have to reflect and say what worked, what didn't work, and how we can implement the new policies and legislation that Yukon will have the share of those revenues.
Other questions? Senator Flexer?
Thank you. Does item 7 here include the ongoing evaluation of the 70 programs that's underway right now? Is that what number 7 is primarily, or is there more beyond that?
It is more to that, but I will have our CFO to respond.
And before that response, is that the biggest portion of that?
Sorry, didn't hear the last part of the question.
Is the evaluation of the 70 programs and majors that's currently being undertaken, is that the largest part of your financial improvement plans, or are there other elements to this?
Oh, no, there is a lot of other elements. As we stated before, one of the major ones is as we look at our workforce and our attrition and our turnover, and that's one of those items that is going to fall into the financial improvement is really the expense side that we're looking at. I think the low enrollment programs is just one that the provost office is doing throughout all of the schools and colleges. But we're also looking at all of the institutional support areas. So these might be anything from our facilities to campus planning to all of the other support areas on campus. They also have targets that they're looking into. So again, there's lots of different items that go into it, but everybody does have a target. Last year, we gave them the target for fiscal year 26 was a 4% reduction. So we'll continue to have those discussions with every department across the campus, including the academic side, but it's every department as we start to develop and go into our budget season for fiscal 26.
I think we are coming to the last slide, but before we move that, the question was what it means to be R01 institution. And I would like if from appendix, we can pull slide 25, please. So this is how we spend the federal dollars that we receive. So the federal and state and corporate grants support the research and institution, but they contribute to the total local economies, and we have to look where do we spend. So it helps with the state procure equipment, consumables, the communities where we do the research. I have the slide before that one. It's a slide number 24, if we can bring that one. This is the proposal written by our Dean of School of Social Work, Professor Laura Curran. And she applied for $3 million for the School of Social Work scholarship to address the mental health services professional demonstration grant. And the project purpose is recruit, train, place, and provide scholarships to graduate social work students to serve as interns in behavior mental health service delivery in 4 low-resource school districts in Connecticut, serving nearly 46,000. So when we think of the Yukon, and when we think of the research, I just want to bring you example how when Yukon faculties are successful, how that benefits our community. And we can go to the last slide, role of state investment. Yukon is Connecticut's flagship university focused on student social and economic mobility. The partnership with the state is critical to our success and help us maintain affordability, provide financial aid, graduate more students, create more jobs, and grow the Connecticut economy and well-being of the citizens of Connecticut. The state investment creates the jobs, fuels the economy, produces tax revenue, enhances its reputation as educational-oriented destination, and associates the state with success and excellence and Huskies. So thank you all for your attention, and go Gino. We are so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. As someone who's working on a financial improvement plan myself at the moment, I know how hard that work is, and I'm looking at my colleague in the CFO world there. And I appreciate the work you guys are doing. It hasn't gone unnoticed. You've been very receptive partners. I know you have challenges on your side. I certainly have challenges on mine, but I think we've had a meeting of the minds, and I appreciate the work you've done. And we're all very proud of UConn, and it's been good to me and my family over the years. So, Representative Walker.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your time and your efforts and your belief in what UConn is and what UConn can be in the future. I'm just going to sort of comment on a couple of statements that people had made today that sort of I stopped talking because I figured it enough. But some people said that the cost of doing business at UConn has gone up. We've never spent this amount of money before. But the cost of living has gone up for everybody. That is not, we're not standing still. We should not stand still, and we should not limit our educational opportunities for the people in the state of Connecticut. UConn offers so much to people, and as you pointed out, Madam President, all the areas where you guys touch is amazing. I'm still learning every day where you are. We have a committee that is studying mental health that is being clerked by UConn. UConn and University of New Haven are doing it together, and they're working in teams. But we're giving our kids from the social work department at UConn the opportunity to actually work in the General Assembly, but also work in the field so that they get that experience and they can take that with them going forward. Some of the other discussions we talked about was what are the benefits for the residents of Connecticut? People move to Connecticut because they want their kids to go to UConn. Believe it or not, I've seen and heard that. And that is very, very true. People want to be able to have a school that is right there local for them, for their children. So I think we pass over all the benefits that we have because we keep going back to the dollar. But the dollar has many facets, and it can have many damaging returns if we keep focusing just on that. We need to focus on the society that we're trying to build here in the state through education and to the things that we want to offer to everybody. The idea of being able to have tiered education for everybody in the state of Connecticut, that are residents who live here, who pay taxes, and who want a better life, that is what we should be thinking about. Who are the people that we serve? We serve those people. So I thank you for what you do. I thank you for being patient with us and letting us ask the same question over and over and over again. It is redundant after a while, but thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
We are very grateful to your partnership. So
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much. So, I actually find it beneficial for people to ask questions. Without asking questions, there is no validity to the answer. You don't, find what you're trying to find out without being able to ask questions, without being criticized for asking such questions. I think that that's important. And I think we should ask them over and over and over again. Because if in fact, and I think it's true that UConn is important, we have to validate that. And you can't validate it in a vacuum of not being able to answer those, ask and answer questions. And, I find it less than helpful if we're not allowed to ask those questions. And I'm not saying that you have not allowed us to ask those questions, but we have people who say, you're asking questions, that means you don't like whatever the group is that comes in front of us. We have a lot of groups that come in front of us that ask us for a lot of money. And I think that we have to ask questions and we have to figure it out because we have a pie that is so big and we have to choose on that pie who should get those percentages of it. So I, for one, am going to continue to ask questions. And I think it's important to do so. And I appreciate your answers. And I appreciate any of my colleagues who ask questions that I may not have thought of. So I'm hoping that this group that we've had here today and the other groups that have come in front of us for higher education are more than willing to sit in front of people asking you tough questions because you want to spend an awful lot of state dollars that we have to figure out who gets each portion thereof. So again, thank you very much.
we appreciate all the due diligence that you do. We appreciate your support. We appreciate the questions that you ask and any new questions that you come up with. We will be more than happy to prepare the answers and have a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Other questions or comments from the board? Representative Haddad.
Since you asked. I just want to say, we passed over this really quickly, but I just wanted to encourage you to continue to look at AAU universities as your peers. The benefits of membership in the American Association of Universities are substantial and measurable in terms of your ability to obtain research dollars. I've been watching membership of that organization for a number of years and just can't believe that UConn is not yet a member of the AAU, but USF is, all due respect to USF. And there are other universities. I just think that we belong in that organization and we belong in that group. And that will take a real concerted effort on the part of the university. But I think it is part of a strategy that will help you enhance the amount of research dollars that you secure. Additionally, I just wanted to say thank you for your appendices. They're very helpful. I can say based on your appendices that you've had an 8% increase in enrollment since 2016 and a 70% increase in your tuition dollars. And so I appreciate being able to sort of put those numbers together. I know that you'll follow up additionally, but mostly I just wanted to take the opportunity to say, please be sure to pursue a strategy that continues to put yourself in a position where you might obtain AAU membership. And I appreciate all of your comments today and the comments and questions of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you and many years of your support and your commitment and investment in infrastructure of UConn. It's really giving us opportunity to go and become AU. institution. We did the study, we looked, are we qualified to enter based on the recent members? Yes, we are, we should be there. But when we enter, we want to be strong. We don't want to be at the bottom. We want to be in the middle or on the top. So we are striving in that direction. Thank you.
Representative Nuccio has her hand up.
Thank you. I would just kind of like to say, I'm mirroring along with what Kathy said. This is literally our job to ask these questions and try to figure out how we're going to spend the state taxpayer dollars. And I'm never afraid of asking questions. I never will be. And I will continue to always ask questions because the better educated that I am, the more I can educate other people. So I appreciate you guys putting together these presentations with the appendix and everything else. It's a lot of good information to go over. But I think it's also fair for us to also question the expense side and everything else, because you are a major investment for the state taxpayer dollars. And yes, we do get a great benefit from having UConn here. And as Kathy said, you know, that people asking questions is not an indication that they are against UConn or against higher education or any of those things. You know, anybody who knows me know that would be absolutely ridiculous to say something like that about me. But these questions just need to be answered, and we need to find the best way to do it, which is why I focus in on the expense side of things. Now, if we can assume the expenses of everything else are going up, I just want to make sure that we're looking at it fairly, because if we keep one thing flat and the expenses of everything else goes up, it has to be paid for by somebody, right? And I just want to make sure that we're getting the best dollar, the best bang for our dollar for what we're investing in the state, in the school, and that the school is also keeping itself relevant and on the cutting edge of what it's doing to keep its expenses down. You know, we hear all the time about the cost of higher ed, right? We hear about student loan forgiveness. We hear about debt. We hear about, you know, how many people can no longer attain a higher education. Well, when the increase in expenses continues to go up, that's what you get, right? It has to be paid for by somebody. That's just a simple math. So I'm looking for ways that we can optimize and do things better and do things in a more efficient expense way. And I think getting those few things that I had asked for is definitely going to be helpful in doing that. I appreciate all the work that goes into all of these things. I know it's not easy as an accountant who's had to pull together, you know, $500 million budgets before, you know, looking at stuff like this. It's not easy. It's sometimes it's reflective, and I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. And I appreciate the work that UConn does. And I just want to make sure that, you know, we're all doing our due diligence. We're asking questions. We're not an echo chamber. We're not just going to sit here and say how great everything is, but we're going to question and look to spend these dollars the best way that we can. So I appreciate you guys partnering with us, and I look forward to more partnership going forward to make sure we've got a great university at a dollar amount that the taxpayers can afford.
Thank you, and we appreciate you. And as any great institution, each day we are trying to be better institution. And with your support and answering all the questions and thinking about solutions, we are moving in right direction.
I agree with you, and I thank you for that partnership, Radenka. I really do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from the board? All right. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your presentation. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. We appreciate everybody. Thank you for your time and support.
The next item on our agenda is to announce the time and date of our next meeting, which will be Wednesday, December 18 at 10 o'clock in this room and via Zoom. And then the next item after that is to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.